Mr. Hassan, now many people in the waiting room.
Yeah.
I think they've told them to join from computer if they have computer, but needs Wi-Fi. Excuse me, Mr. Hassan, can you hear me? I'm so sorry to waste your time. Sorry.
Your phones.
Exactly.
I'm still sorry. Mr. Hassan is not in meeting.
Okay.
Wonderful. Good morning, everyone who's joining us now.
Yes. Can you hear us, please?
We can hear you. Is that Mr. Hassan speaking?
Mr. Hassan, yes. Yes, he can hear you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. We will speak as loudly as we can.
Okay, please.
And I see lots of people. Okay, so I'm starting now, sir.
Okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone joining. Excuse me? Shall I mute him? Okay, he's muted now. Is it recording? It is recording. Thank you, Kajitan. Good morning again, once more, to everyone joining online. We apologize for the delay in starting. The room is less resourced than we were hoping it would be. The rest of the conference will not be like this, but we've had trouble today getting connected. So now we are all connected, all together. Thank you very much for joining this session. It's always an important session at the conference. So my name is Kali Kutsia. I am the chair of the Publications Committee, and I'm the person who organizes these workshops and information sessions. And today I'm introducing you to two editors online, and one editor is in the room. So we're going to see how we can make things flow together. I will introduce the editors first. Or would you like to introduce yourselves? I'll introduce you, shall I? The first one is Professor, in no order, just as people appear on my screen. Professor Abimbola Adelakun, soon to be from the University of Chicago, and soon to be one of the editors of the Journal of African Cultural Studies. So Professor Adelakun, very welcome, and congratulations with all your many new projects.
Thank you.
The second person on my screen is Professor Kajitan Iheka, who is at the University of Yale, and the editor. Do you still use the terminology? What is the terminology? The chief editor, lead editor of the African Studies Association of the US's flagship journal, and one of the leading journals of African studies. Professor Iheka, thank you very much for making time and for being here. Our third editor is Professor Ying Sheng, who's on the ground. and I don't know whether she can hear us. Professor Xing, welcome.
Hello. Hello, I'm
Uh,
joining from the room, but I will be sitting on the other side, so you won't be able to see me. But I have to apologize that only part of the room will be able to hear you. So we are hoping that the rest of the room who cannot hear will join from online as well using their cell phones. So
Thank you.
this is the best we can do now. So sorry.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I will be sitting on the other side. Yeah, so
Thank you.
thank you.
So a multimedia, multi-connected room. We are DIY creativity in action. Professor Ying Sheng is at the University of Beijing, and she is the editor of the Africa and Asia Studies Journal. And she will be representing that journal and answering questions about that journal. So I'm very happy then to be here and to be hosting this. We are waiting for one more editor who I think is not able to join. He's in Dakar at the moment, and that is Professor Shege Gethiora, who edits the journal Chemchemi. Professor Hassan, Mr. Hassan, can I ask you to switch off your microphone?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, I'm going to start now by asking questions to the editors, and I apologize for people in the room who can't hear very well. We will record the session. So I'm going to ask the first question to Professor Iheka, and then we'll move on. So please, sir, if you could tell us, in your view, as the editor of one of the leading journals, which is an interdisciplinary journal, could you tell us what kind of scholarship you think is urgent and useful at the moment? So a kind of overview of where you see the field. Thank you very much, Prof.
Yeah, thank you so much, Carly, for for organizing and for inviting me to be part of this. And hi to everyone in the room. So I think we're when we think about Africa today, especially from Africa is actually at the forefront, really, if we're thinking research that is interdisciplinary. Because our work, I think, in African studies has primarily been that, those of us, you and I come from a background in literary studies, but we find that the most exciting work, are those that cuts across domains, that will, disciplinary domains. So I think, when, I think about, the fact that, the continent, there's a lot of opportunities on the continent, but also a lot of challenges that I'm always excited about research that is addressing events or issues on the continent, but also the challenges that the continent has. So in those two domains, then I would take, so in terms of the exciting possibilities of the continent, the youth culture on the continent, is just, fantastic, it's the young, the youngest continent, in terms of demographics. It is also the place where, young people are, I've been here for almost a week now, and you're like, all the exciting things happening have been led by young people, even with limited resources and how much they're doing. So it just matters that, a kind of exciting development like youth cultures, is a vibrant area that I think needs a lot of a lot of interest. I'm sitting right here also close to close to a church, having a very vibrant a midday. This is 11:30 and it is packed. For this, midday. These are people who have left work, they've left the businesses, to come to church, to have, to be in fellowship, to worship. So, so religious cultures, and, Professor Adelakun is here, of course, is a leader in this field. So I think, so youth cultures, religious cultures are some of the places, some of the exciting, events here that has, they have particular salience for the lives of people. They have particular, it's also the part of the strength part of the strength. If we're talking about aging population in Europe, if we're talking about a godless America or a godless Europe, these are opposites here. So I think, it's important that we study, this important development. But it's also places where, where there are challenges and that the continent, can be part of that solution, whether it's, in terms of question of climate change, the question of climate change, for instance, or the fact that, as Ngugi wa Thiong'o just passed, and it's bringing back the question of languages, African languages, and what is happening to them as of language for knowledge production, for literary questions of language, of climate change, of the environment, also some of the areas. And it's also, the fact that, today, everywhere you go, there's a conversation about, artificial intelligence. Africa cannot be or should not be, should not be data. Africa should not just be data for, for this area that, those of us studying topics like that. So again, to summarize my answer is that, that what we should be looking at areas where where Africa is leading in terms of deciding development, be it youth culture, be it entrepreneurship, be it religious culture, but also the places, where there are challenges, and then we have a particular story to tell, artificial intelligence being one of them, question of environment and climate change being another. So those are the areas that I think, we should be developing research and expertise in.
Thank you very much. For that answer. It's an answer that perhaps needs further paragraphs, which I will give you time later, for young scholars who are maybe don't see the world, from the drone view, but see the world more at grass level. It takes a lot of learning and a lot of experience to be able to see things from above. So thank you for that, and I'll lead with further questions. Thank you so much. I now ask Professor Adela, from where you are sitting, with what would you say are the urgent and useful topics to which people could turn?
Thank you very much, Professor Kali, and thank you to the other panelists and the attendees. Thank you very much for being here today. I will say that I will join Kajetan and say that what I consider urgent and useful right now has a lot to do with, the vibrant culture that's ongoing in Africa. Much of a particular generation, it's a very exciting, lots of exciting possibilities are happening right now. And I am always very, very excited when I see a scholarship that addresses all these important and significant changes that are going on and demonstrates, and this is really important, demonstrates its ability to put a finger on the pulse of the event, right? So it is one thing for people to see that, oh, there is a lot happening, but it takes some ability to see the kind of scholarship that is these issues that are, manifested, and is able to speak to them in ways that connect to discipline, right? It connects the entire international platforms, right? Like Netflix, like Amazon Prime. And I want to see people who want, that kind of scholarship to join conversations with Nollywood. Of creativity. And this, again, like we also know that a lot of these technological changes that are happening, they are also bringing new ideas in the music industry. It's changing the way we produce music. It's changing the whole idea of band production, right? And so again, how are you able to speak to all of this and begin to track the trajectory of scholarship and then look at all this development and be able to bring out their significance? So that's the way I am thinking of this urgent and fresh scholarship now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I want to emphasize that in response to both of these speakers, what we assume also is that when you are trying to write about something, you will have read what others have written about it. So it's not as though you are birthing a topic from an egg, the first person to think about it. What's really important is to have read what others have said, and then within that, to develop your argument. So that is often the hardest part, to map yourself, to map the field. So when we say urgent, we also don't mean instant. Well, does the online have a connection to Professor Ying Sheng? Professor Sheng, are you there?
And the video. Hello, everyone. I'll be speaking and addressing to the room. On the
Please,
other
forget
side.
about
Okay.
us.
Yeah, I have heard everything what you said, so I will join from my side.
Thank you so much. So people online, we may not hear every word, but now this is the important people are the people in the room. Please go ahead. Ah, but the microphone is now muted. Mr. Hassan, yes, perfect.
Here. So from my perspective, I think most of you have a little flyer that I circulated from the journal that I'm editing, Journal of Africa and Asian Studies. So from my very limited experiences of working with the journal, I think so what has been lacking in this field of African and Asian studies is that we look at each other's history, societies from in a very segregated way. So there also the journal has been established for decades, but it has been publishing. It is an interdisciplinary journal, but it has been publishing articles about an Asian society or an African society. There were very little articles that, very few articles that were dealing with interactions and histories of exchanges within Asian and African society. So I would say that the overlooked histories of exchanges, cultural exchanges, historical exchanges, economic political exchanges would be one of the fields that as a journal we would love to see more in the future. And we also felt that there are currently imbalances within knowledge production within the area of Asian and African studies. I'm just going to give a very specific example. For instance, in the past, so now in recent years, there has been an emergence of African studies within the context of China. But I noticed that, but here on the African continent, there were very few African scholars studying about Asian cultures and Asian society. I think as the relationship that has been intensifying, so I think it's necessary for us to learn more about each other from thinking from our own locations and the geographies. I would see I'm always particularly inspired by articles that deal with the grassroots level of exchanges and interactions, the on-the-ground sort of studies of, for instance, popular culture forms, how the society. So those are the articles that I feel particularly inspiring. I can also, in our later discussion, I can give you specific examples of the articles that I find quite useful. So yeah, so maybe for the first part, I spoke mostly from the side of the journal, but for the next part, maybe I will speak a little bit more about my own experiences of doing research in Nigeria as an outsider. And I think perhaps Nigerian scholars are better, feel that Nigerian scholars are much better than me. That's okay, that's from me now. Can you, okay, and Kali, can you hear me now? No? We can, hello.
Hello.
Where are we?
Hello.
Hello. Can we move on to next question now?
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. And thank you for, can you thank the audience for being very disciplined because it's very quiet in the back. Thank you. All right. So online audience, we're doing our best to connect the two worlds. Audience on the ground, we are so appreciative of you, of how quiet you are and how disciplined you are to make this session work. I want to move on to the second question. So in the answers to the first questions, we've heard quite ambitious answers about the kind of scholarship that is urgent, that is needed, that is at the center of knowledge production, scholarship that places African answers to global questions in the center. Now I want us to bring the drone down, and now we're landing on the ground. And I want to ask editors now, with your knowledge of conditions in libraries and
Disconnected. So the connection
that you know young scholars have. Can you mute?
Mute. Did you mute?
Good. Okay. Please, can you mute? Yes, thank you. I want to have control to be able to mute. If I'm the driver, I want to be able to control the microphones, but I think that's not possible. All right, so my question now is, with our familiarity of conditions on the ground, libraries that do not necessarily have a lot of online resources, difficult conditions, what are the practical ways in which early career scholars in Nigeria can approach this issue? And I want to ask my question in a particular way. How can Lagos Studies Association early career members write an article that you can never write from the best library in America? So what are the tricks? What are the maneuvers? How can we do this? Prof. Eheka, can you go first, please?
This question with one of the things that I've noticed, one of the shifts that you found in papers is less and less immersion in primary resources. I think that's that's one of the things that you've noticed, especially with those of us who are working outside the continent. And one of the things we're like, oh, I've not been able to travel, or I had limited access to archives and things like that. But I think it's for to of being able to visit archives. Again, I say that knowing the practical challenges that are grounded when people relations. Every time I come back, I still remember that just being nice, being being respectful and not give access. So it matters then that I think one of some of the work that can be done here fruitfully and productively is the kind of work that is drawing patiently from archival materials here. From talking to people, I was just like yesterday in Abuja, I was over the last few weeks, I've been reading the work of one of a junior colleague in Abuja who is writing a dissertation on Biafra. And I'm listening. This generation, the people who witnessed this war, were getting to the cops where people who were older than, were losing them. And I'm like, I've read almost 300 pages. There is no one word. A survivor, someone who lived through Biafra. And I'm like, but you're well positioned. You're Igbo, you're an Easterner, you just go into your community can make a difference here. So being able, I think, that that our colleagues here, can have the opportunity to be able, to go, to access these archives that people from elsewhere, are able to access the archives, access the libraries, access the living persons, that's oral sources. Because I think there's a sense sometimes in which, we devalue such knowledge. But I think one of the amazing things about the past 2-3 decades, I think, is this revaluation of oral sources. So I want to emphasize that I think is important to be able to be able to enrich those papers. I think of the papers, this, and I'm like, yeah, but then, less on the primary data, which is your contribution, So I think, rebalancing, becomes, very, very, important. And rebalancing means, of course, what you've said earlier, Carly, which is being able to read others. find papers for me on this. Well, if I'm working on that, if it's on environmental issues I'm working on, yes, you can do that. But if you're working on a general topic, I think you can meet the person halfway, do the research, find those titles, and send to the person. And most likely they will be able, most likely, as I'm using this community as an example, people here, most people will find those papers and send to you. And then, you can incorporate them. So your primary sources and then your secondary sources, but make sure that the balance is still weighed toward your own contribution. You're not, you're not starting a new field. So you're joining a conversation, bring that conversation in, make sure that scholars, African scholars, including especially those who are, who are in these communities that you're engaging with, are already included in the work. And then, yet make sure that your voice, these primary sources, and don't just drop those primary sources in there. Then how can you help them drive your argument? Let the sources help you drive these primary sources, the primary data, let them drive your the argument you're making. Then the last thing I will say again, which ties to this community of scholars, is that you need a trusted network, a trusted network where you share work, So find people that you're sharing your draft with and getting feedback that allows you to see the things you're not seeing normally, and then that allows you to improve the work before it comes to the journal editors. So you want to do that, some quality checks before that happens. Those can be people at your university. They can be people you meet at these conferences. So I think what I've been emphasizing is that this conference is not just for you to present your paper. In fact, it's 10%. It should be 10% of what you do here. That much of it should be building community, people you read, and people will read you. Useful resource, and people you can also be useful to as well. So, in the earlier question, we've talked about, this important now craft something out of it, So, what is around us? Drawing what is around us, written and non-written sources, the secondary materials, including people who are working here, and then making sure, because I've just looked recently too at a paper from like the sayings and wisdoms of Lucas, who collected these resources, the sayings, the proverbs, the folktales, but very little analysis was done. Very, very little analysis was done, to be able to ground, the sources into an argument. So those are the kind of things that I think if that paper was read by, by someone, a candid colleague, a friend, they probably would have been able to point it out and the scholar could fix it. So, I want to use the floor, but I think, rebalancing that brings the unique perspectives of the sources that we have locally into in the kind of research that I think, those people just starting can do. And I want to overemphasize is that the most important, very important part of research is that you have to read. You have to read poem.
journal, but pretend for a moment that you are writing for a foreign journal. And that's not